Welcome to the Blockbusters and Birdwalks podcast. I am the curator, Garrett Chaffin-Quiray. Today we have a conversation with a friend, Ed Rosa.
That's me. Hi. My filmmaking partner and I have a YouTube channel, Toothless Richard Productions, where you can see a number of our short films. A blockbuster is a film that makes disgusting amounts of money. They tend to be movies that sort of invade the popular consciousness in a way that's difficult to avoid.
I tell people that a blockbuster is a $100 million gross in a single territory.
An Officer and a Gentleman tells the story of Carrie Mahoney, who is a young upstart who runs afoul of the law and is given the choice of jail or the police academy. He selects the police academy. He goes in, has to deal with a ruthless drill sergeant, and somehow manages to become an officer and a gentleman. Richard Gere has daddy issues, so he enlists in the Navy because he wants to fly planes without having seen Top Gun. And it's the story of his trials and tribulations in the Naval Academy.
Nine-year-old Garrett knows about movies because Entertainment Tonight is daily broadcast.
Yep.
I'm starting to pay attention.
Right.
And if you think back to 1982, and I've given you some notes.
It was quite a year.
Just before An Officer and a Gentleman is released in July, Conan the Barbarian, The Road Warrior Part 2, or Mad Max Part 2,
yeah.
Annie and Rocky 3 are already in theaters doing well. I was taken to go see Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, which is when my parents discovered that I could not see. No matter how close we got to the screen, I couldn't see what was happening. And it was my nod to go get corrective lenses, which I worked out by the fall of that year. But not after I also begged and pleaded to go see Poltergeist, E.T. many times. Was not allowed to see Blade Runner or The Thing because they were R-rated movies. Missed Tron because the old man was like, no way.
Yeah.
And I asked what a whorehouse was because the best little whorehouse in Texas was released. My parents had a date night to go see An Officer and a Gentleman, and came back and gave me the most saccharine description of what's possible. Your funny version of Police Academy was far better, because what I learned is some young people fall in love at a military academy. Why are all the adults around me like wanting to go, including my grandparents who were not moviegoers?
Right.
I stopped doing my notes after 6 months worth of this, but it overlapped with Fast Times at Ridgemont High, First Blood, Sophie's Choice, the eventual Academy Award winner Gandhi, The Verdict, and Tootsie. All of them are in theaters at the very same time.
I mean, I can't even imagine it if I could have been me today.
Yeah. This strikes me as a good year, and I wasn't prepared for that exactly. I mean, I already mentioned that 82 was for me a year when I think the switch turned on, that Garrett began to notice movies, largely because of the vehicle of E.T. But this isn't about E.T. It's about this alternative thing called An Officer and a Gentleman. And because of our present view of the economy of Hollywood, it's also interesting to note that at its time, it was considered a pretty wide release, but it was a few hundred screens. It earned a few $1 million its opening weekend, but because it was open so very long, it returned more than $100 million in 1982 dollars.
That's big money.
When you convert it to today, it's a $400 million hit, which means it would have been comparable to something like The Hunger Games when that was in theaters. Huge, huge movie.
Yeah.
The other thing of note, I had also forgotten how poignantly written around the problem of the American experience of Vietnam this movie is. It comes out in 82. It was written, I think, in the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah, it said, IMDb trivia said, like, the script languished in Hollywood for like 7 or 8 years or something, and nobody wanted to do it for a long time.
And I think the writer, Douglas Day Stewart, who I otherwise don't know anything about, but he apparently was an officer aviation candidate, very much like our Zach Mayo, our Richard Gere character here.
But was he a gentleman?
I don't know if he was, but I know he was injured and couldn't fulfill his training and never got his wings.
Okay.
But and I think he ended up being a truck driver or something in Vietnam because he couldn't fly.
He got his wheels.
He got his wheels, right. So there was a way he was transforming, a formative experience of his young life into this unusual war story that's not really about war. So from my present eyes, what I was thinking about this movie a lot was its class disposition. As you pointed out, this is the story of a guy with daddy issues. So our fella, Zach, has grown up with a suicide mother, and he was farmed out to his father, who's a serial womanizer and alcoholic who just follows the Navy wherever the Navy sends him. He's an enlisted man. Mm-hmm. So the choice Zach makes to go to college and graduate, which he has done, to become then an officer candidate, which he has done, would mean if he can successfully get his wings, his father would have to salute him.
You gotta give up 6 fucking years of your life to the Navy if you want to fly. 6 fucking years with the most uptight assholes God ever put on this earth. Officers, man, they're not like you or me. They're a different breed.
You know what this sounds like? Sounds like you're afraid you might have to salute me someday, Chief.
Shit.
Because then he goes off to training, and it's across the Puget Sound from a warehouse district where a bunch of horny women work. And these horny women are regularly poaching these young officer candidates. So there's 4 chances a year to find a marriageable guy to get you out of the paper bag factory where you work.
Right.
And that's literally the background for the other lead. That's Deborah Winger's character, Paula.
That's right.
Who's the brunette of a brunette-blonde pairing. They're wing women for one another as they go out meeting boys. And it seems that they've been doing this a while, so they sort of know the ropes. It's clear from how they get introduced at certain social functions that the older matrons attached to the royalty of the academy are definitely trying to get these young chickens off of their roosters.
Yeah.
Go find the young men and enjoy yourself.
Right.
It's a completely straight thing that many of these women who are looking at these young officers are looking at these young officers so they can get pregnant, so they can get married, so they can leave this crummy town and see the wider world.
Yeah.
So that's the entire point of womanhood in this movie. Trap a guy.
That sounds almost cancelable by today's standards.
This couldn't possibly be made in the way that it is today. My point is, this movie is just really strongly driven through with the problems of upward mobility. The fellas, to be in this program, are college graduates. And then to succeed, they're going to go off to more training, and then off to more training. And if all of that works, they'll have a 6-year contract of having to fly for the Navy. And if that all works, they're going to become commercial airline pilots, which is where the real money is.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the whole point of these young men's careers and the 2 or 3 women who are alongside them, which was opening up the doors of women in the military, which I know in the 80s was shocking. But then the folks who live in this community permanently don't have any of that going for them. And that's what Paula is. Somebody doesn't have an education. We presume she's gotten through high school. But because her mom is, hurrah, she's 39 years old and works on the line. When I heard that, I rewound the movie.
Yeah.
She's 39?
Yeah.
And she's old?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, because Deborah Winger in this film is, she's 21 or 23 or something like that?
I think she's even younger, like 19 or 20.
That means mom had her at 19.
Yeah, and so was
that's
definitely knocking boots at a younger age. So another contextual reminder is because this is the post-Vietnam era, we know that the military contracted after that conflict. And yet some of the elder characters have a fixed relationship with having been in Vietnam. And they refer to it. Mm-hmm. That caused me to think that, the floodgate must have opened with something like The Deer Hunter, right, in 78, and Coming Home.
Yeah.
And
well, I know
even Thunder,
even
things of this sort.
First Blood as well.
Right,
I know
here.
it was one of the is frequently cited as one of like the first films to sort of really like open up that era of American cinema dealing with like post-Vietnam trauma.
What is the manifestation of the national bloody nose? Mm-hmm. A failure that war effort represents to so many people. And here, just like in Top Gun, we don't focus on what can go wrong. These are sparky young dudes who want to do well, along with the one or 2 women in their class, who meet these sparky young women who want a better life, and they all want to have sex.
Yeah.
Which is no doubt the reason why I was definitely kept away from this.
There's
objectionable language. There's nudity. There is sexual intimacy. There are small moments of violence, which wouldn't have been the problem. There's a lot of rhyming when eventually they meet their drill instructor who makes them run and gets them into physical shape.
Yeah, he's got a real potty mouth.
He does. Yeah. And it's sort of a delight to listen to Louis Gossett Jr. as...
Bilko? No. Bilko.
As gunnery sergeant.
Emil Foley.
Sergeant
Foley,
right,
that's
Sergeant
right,
Foley.
that's right.
He is sort of terrific. So another thing just to throw in the air. This is a war movie, or at least that's often how it's discussed, because it's preparing these young people to go be pilots and therefore the vanguard of our super advanced, technologically sophisticated military organization. There's very little that we see that actually is them getting ready to go to war. They do a lot of calisthenics, push-ups and running.
That was one thing that kind of tripped me out about this, is sort of the seemingly incredibly small scale of this boot camp.
Mm-hmm.
Automatically, if you have a college degree to become an officer, and then, to actually be pilots, I imagine with my glasses, I'd be right out.
Yeah.
So I suppose it does make sense that this thing seemed very small.
They make mention that they're going to go from this camp, where they're going to go through 13 weeks of basic in Washington. They'll go to Pensacola, Florida, and then they'll go to Texas. And if they make all three of those and don't get kicked out, they will eventually, through all of that, become helicopter pilots, or they'll become big freighter pilots, or ideally they want to be jet pilots. They want to be fighter pilots. They want to become the Top Guns.
Right.
All of that is so far ahead of them, and the dynamics of what we're watching is them just becoming people who can run a great distance fast. That's satisfying to a degree, but I wasn't prepared to encounter that now in my middle years, thinking about this fetish object that I was not allowed to see as a boy, and then seeing what it's really about. You're completely correct. It's Police Academy done seriously.
Yeah.
Because when he's done, he's going to ride off on his motorcycle and go to the next phase of camp.
Right.
And just repeat it with more sophistication, and presumably he'll get drummed out because he can't do math.
Right. He's going to move on to his first assignment.
Yes.
Police Academy 2, a cornerstone of American crime fiction.
And Bobcat will show
Yep,
up. And,
that's right. Yeah, Tim Kazurinsky, all of them.
It's going to be wonderful. I hadn't made these connections at all. My mind was in a different place while watching this movie, so I'm so pleased that you noticed those connections. I was noticing how this movie sets the stage for the more serious number of 1980s Vietnam-specific stories that we would eventually see, which is partly because some of the technical advisors also became advisors for things like Full Metal Jacket.
Oh, Ed, get your hand down. Up, right, up, right, up, double time. Here. Up, right, up, right, up, right, up. I love working for Uncle Sam.
R. Lee Ermey worked on this film as, like, the consultant for Louis Gossett Jr., for the Foley character.
Right.
So, because I'm obviously a big Kubrick fan, and I've seen Full Metal Jacket more times than I could ever possibly count. I was like, wow, this is like Full Metal Jacket before Full Metal Jacket.
Where are you from, boy?
Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, sir.
Ah. Only two things come out of Oklahoma. Steers and queers. Which one are you, boy? I don't see no horns, so you must be a queer.
No, sir.
Stop whispering, sweet Pete. You give me a hard on.
No, sir.
Today's military is often talked about as being relatively soft compared to previous generations.
Yeah, it's really different now, from what I
It's more
understand.
encouraging, not as punishing. And this movie demonstrates a moment of hinge, where that punishment ethos is definitely part of Foley's world. He wants to break these young people. He wants to force them to quit of their own volition, to DOR out of the group.
But that's really his job. I mean, you're trying to make soldiers of these guys. You need to toughen them up. So.
They have to be prepared, and he completely is convinced and trying to get half of them to leave. And I think he's largely successful. So when you think about the elite, you already mentioned the physical capability, good eyes, good ears, not overweight, use of all limbs, right? Good mathematics skills, because you'll be expected to do things while flying an airplane of some sort or a helicopter of some sort. You have to have a college degree. Right there, you put all that in order, and you've eliminated
like 75% of the populace.
And then you got some age stuff you got to worry about. You don't want them over encumbered with family commitments because they'll be distracted all of the time. All blah blah blah. So you're left with the cream at the top of the milk can, right? And from there, you're trying to select the very best who can tolerate all of this punishing difficulty. And he does dish it out pretty well. I guess to just circle back, I was unprepared for this movie to be as class conscious as it is, and to be as not really about military life, with the exception of hierarchy. Foley really is drilling these young people. Do what I say, do what I ask, or you're out.
Right.
And our fella, Zach Mayo, our lead, he just can't seem to get with the program. So let me just throw at you, there were some astonishing gaps in plot I could not accept. Towards the end of the movie, when lots of things have happened to Zach Mayo, he gets assaultive towards his drill instructor, who is willing to turn the cheek after he's drummed people out for less.
Right.
The penultimate scene is the two of them fighting each other hand to hand, mano a mano, without rank, simply because they're angry at each other.
Right.
What the hell?
Okay, it's weird to me that he could just quit. Once he signed his name on the line,
Your
ain't no quitting.
Yeah.
You ain't quitting.
There's a scene when...
I mean, you got to die to quit.
when Zach and his best friend Sid, and that's David Keith, they're dining with Sid's family, and his father had been one of these aviation officers. I'm talking about an earlier generation, and the father even says, "You didn't get to quit in my time. If you washed out, they just sent you out to some other assignment,
right?
And it was awful,
right? You don't
you
quit.
did not want to screw up because
exactly.
At least you could control your fate to a degree."
I
again, that must have been sort of the liberalization and the encouragement to get people to try the military post-Vietnam.
Right, like, okay, well, we'll let you quit if you don't like it.
Right, if you can't do this. But you're right, I was surprised by that. I remember the movie differently, because, I saw this when I eventually was an adult and could get it on videotape. But I had sort of gummed up all of the secondary performers into one character. So as the example, Sid, David Keith's character, the best friend of Zach, who seems to have everything going for him, who's eventually a suicide. And he's successful in that act, just like Zach's mom. Funny echoes, right?
Right.
I had thought he was the same guy who failed the aviation test in the pool, who's actually David Caruso.
Right.
There's a similar little secondary role in First Blood. Same, he's just got to be punished to get the narrative going.
Right.
I thought all that was the same person. I'm wrong. So it's nice to see my memory get pulled apart. And there were other elements, too. The city-country divide. At various points, our young officers in their dress whites are out having a beer to meet the girls, or they're out socializing, and you can see that the local boys who can't get into officer training because they don't have college, because they don't have that kind of they resent it. Why are you here flirting with our women and rubbing our noses in it? Because you're just going to be gone 10 weeks, flyboy.
Right.
Either because you quit or you get a cool job.
Right. Well, which is funny, too, because, what are you going to do for them?
Part of why this movie now feels poignant to me is this is early Reagan era when there was real problems in non-college educated American life, where a stagnation of wages, huge inflation was chewing up the dollars that people could actually earn throughout this entire period. And so we're watching a point of view character, Richard Gere, who's handsome and kind of conventionally beautiful. We'll come back to that.
Yeah.
Gossett, as D.I. Foley tells him, if you survive me, you get $1 million training if you just last and become a commercial aviator for United Airlines. What a great deal. So let's hit this thing for what it is. This movie is not famous as a military expose. It is famous as a love story. How does the love story work for you?
Like I said, for some stupid reason, I wanted to see this as a kid. But my parents had seen it, and my mom wouldn't let me see it because apparently, it was pretty raunchy with the sex.
Yeah.
There's only really, one scene that's, kind of,
But it's kind of specific.
Well, and actually, on that one scene that I'm talking about, actually, according to IMDb Trivia, actually got the film an X rating. And rather than cut the scene, I guess they just, pushed into it so that you couldn't see, it's like Deborah Winger's, on top of Richard Gere.
Right, she's straddling him.
Right, and, so they pushed in so that you couldn't see her hips grinding on him. That got them to rescind the X.
Okay.
It just kind of fell flat for me. Why am I watching this? Well, I know I'm watching it for this, but is it supposed to be like a military pick, like Full Metal Jacket? I get it. Police Academy, I understand.
Yes.
But with this, it's we got to have this fairly average romance between 1.5 likable people.
Yeah.
I didn't feel really any chemistry between the two of them.
I agree.
I felt no heat. Richard Gere, I've never really liked him. None of the characters were appealing to me, really, except for Louis Gossett Jr.
Yeah.
He's such a presence on screen. He's wonderful. So there was that.
He speaks really well. He's tall. For me, the best love relationship in this movie is Sid and Zach. There's a couple of scenes when they get really close to each other and they're really leaning in for their dialogue.
Yeah.
Just kiss him. You want to so much.
Right. Maybe when making Top Gun, maybe Tony Scott was like, no, this heat. This is the heat I want.
Anthony Edwards, I want you to love Maverick this much.
Right. Well, and so then, when we get to the point where Deborah Winger is like, oh, she's crying and I love him, Mom, and all this. I'm like, why?
Yeah, he's a jerk.
Okay.
He's plainly a jerk.
Okay. This guy's in shape.
Right.
He can run for miles.
Right.
He grew up.
He's got some stamina. He grew up over a whorehouse.
Right.
For 6 years.
He grew up in a land of prostitutes.
Yeah.
Right. He knows his way around women. So it's but honey, if that's really why you're this into him, that's going to dry up at some point, and there needs to be something more substantial, or you guys are done.
But here's the thing that I notice about their acting skills. One, I don't know that Richard Gere has a lot of acting skills.
I don't think he does.
I think the roles that he's successful in
because he was hot.
Well, he's a beautiful guy.
Right.
That's right. He is a beautiful guy. He is beautiful here, but he doesn't have he doesn't have the ability to convey an inner life. I guess that's my complaint.
Yeah.
His inner life is drawn from being upset with his old man, who, admittedly, when we meet his old man, played by Robert Loggia, great casting.
Yeah.
He's a scoundrel who regularly was just womanizing above this whorehouse in the Philippines and introduces his son to this lifestyle. If it weren't for all of that information, what we have is Richard Gere washing a little water in his face, otherwise staring at his good-looking locks and his great body.
Right.
Why does he want to be a pilot? Because he doesn't seem to care about other people.
No.
He's not a team player. He's not really invested in the military. If anything, he must hate the military because of his father's awful behavior. The point. He's not motivated by anything that I can access, except to stand around and look good in his underpants and occasionally almost see him naked.
Right.
Which is, that's something.
Right. Yeah.
But that's not a movie.
Right.
That's a magazine layout, and maybe that's valuable. Deborah Winger seems to be able to suggest a willingness to engage in the scene play with her scene partner. She's looking for eye contact. She moves. She's tracking. She seems alive to what's happening.
Yeah, she's very good.
But it's like he's not giving her anything.
Right.
I've heard him describe, and I think it's her description, he's kind of a brick wall.
Right. Yeah, that's what I read too.
And then it was difficult to work with him, and there was no excitement between them.
Which was evident.
Yeah.
And then that, what's happening like sort of in real life between these two performers is like bleeding into the story where I'm just not buying her devotion to this guy, or whether unless she's so desperate to get the hell out of there.
Yeah.
And he's good in bed and he's hot. Well, how many of those guys are coming through?
And eventually, when he kind of dumps her, she seems to move on. She has a date with the flight instructor, who's a permanent employee of the base. Mm-hmm. He's going to be a stable, proper choice, too.
Right.
She doesn't lack for opportunity, and she's not as desperately clingy the way that her friend Lynette is to trap a guy and see the world. She seems to have a balance with her mom and her stepdad, albeit with some tensions, but it seems to be like she's okay. Mm-hmm. But just technically, to watch the performances, I can see that she's trying to give something. I can see that he's not capable of doing that, either because he doesn't like her as a co-performer, doesn't have the skills, couldn't get directed into having them in time, because after all, they got to get this movie in the can, however it's going to happen. Let's just make sure they're naked a couple of times, and that'll be pretty suggestive. And it is. I mean, he goes nom-nom on her boobs while they're having the sex. Yeah. They make jokes about how he goes flaccid after he ejaculates, although they seem to have the strangest orgasm together. She is more capable as a performer than he is.
Definitely.
But even so, her role is such a limited depth. She, too, doesn't have any dimensionality to her.
Right.
So neither character were interesting to me.
I'll go you one further, too. So the whole premise of this thing, right, is that Mayo is this troubled dude. I'm like, wait a minute. There's nothing actually wrong with this guy. He's introspective and responsible enough to realize, like, well, I'm going nowhere here in, Manila with my drunkard old man. I'm going to do something for myself. He successfully graduates college, goes to become an officer. He performs admirably physically. He's able to accomplish all the stuff.
So he's individualistic and self-assured and also not regarding other people's needs. Fine. Isn't that just like a 22-year-old?
Right. But he won't quit. No. So he shows that kind of drive, the determination, the tenacity. Right. The thing of it is, Carey Mahoney couldn't quit.
Right.
You can't quit. You quit, you go to jail.
Yeah.
Richard Gere can walk.
Love lifters up where we belong, where the eagles cry on a mountain high.
Then there's two important things that this movie is always known for, even if you don't really understand all of its arc, and that is its ending. And that song, man, Up Where We Belong.
Yeah, but by the end, because they use it as a leitmotif, I'm over it.
Yeah,
I was over it as a kid, hearing it on the radio every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
In fact, I think it was on once an hour, every hour until 1987 when that stupid Dirty Dancing song came out.
Right.
Now I had the time of my life. No, I never felt like this before.
But in the end, this is just a caveman story. He goes off to 13 weeks of caveman construction, comes out in a white suit, walks through the factory where his girl lives, sneaks up on her.
Beats her over the head with his club.
Yeah, and he carries her away while everybody's like, good job, Paula!
You did
Way to get him!
You did it.
But then it freeze frames, it goes to credits, and unlike modern movies, the credits are over with pretty fast.
Yeah, they're very short.
While you're listening to Up Where We Belong. And so I sat there and I stared. what am I looking at? He cavemanned her to hop on the back of his motorcycle. No helmets, of course, because that's before those rules come into effect. And then I guess they're going to drive to Florida and then learn to live with each other while he's never home because he's training. He's going to be a pilot. And she doesn't have a job or family or friends. So she's going to become a knockabout, military wife with the other young knockabouts, moving place to place to place. So what kind of life are they going to have? As you said, the sex stuff, well, that's always a tug of attraction between people who are intimate. It's got to be one thing to get you involved in one another.
Right.
But he cavemanned her.
Right.
Was her life so bad?
Right.
Will the life he's going to give her be so much better?
Well,
and I suppose maybe that's where this movie becomes a blockbuster and resonated.
Because you don't have to worry about what comes afterwards.
You never have to worry about it.
It's a happy ending for them.
It is.
It's a happy ending for these two 25-year-olds.
And he hasn't apologized for being a prickly jerk who couldn't otherwise express himself. So he cavemans her.
Yeah.
But, that's what a taciturn fellow like him would do.
Right.
And I suppose for a lot of people that made this movie popular, especially those that had lived through the boomers, who had lived through the Vietnam era, some of whom served, some of whom protested against it. The wide swath tried to ignore it as a terrible national problem that was difficult to know what to do. Were then reaching their 30s thinking, well, that could be okay. Maybe they're going to work out.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible.
Yeah, they might have threaded that needle. And I suppose for people who weren't going to, pussycat theaters to look at actual XXX pornography, and before videotape allows you to bring that kind of thing home, when we watch them make love to each other, we're not seeing penetration, but we're seeing some bodies at work.
Yeah.
And without those other channels of stuff, which now we would get on our phone with a few instances of Googling, this would have been the place to go. So I have to sort of think that must have been what people were going for. And then another layer to it is it celebrated as the Louis Gossett Jr. Oscar. I think he is a deserving performer. I found that if the movie could have been twisted and opened up in certain ways, just a peek, it could have been a much richer movie that I would have enjoyed more if we'd learned more about Foley's backstory.
Yeah, I think I've complained about this before. Like, I don't want every movie to be 3 hours, but it's like stuff is just not explored deeply enough to make me care the way I feel like I'm supposed to care.
You know how when you were a kid and you had teachers and you thought the teachers are always just at school because that's where I see the teachers?
Right. They
that's how Foley's organized. He's a hardcore naval DI. That's his job. He's got the cool hat. He's got the rad threads.
Yeah.
He's there to break butts. That's what his whole job is. And every 13 weeks he gets a new group to break them down. That's all he does. But of course it can't be all he does. Maybe he's got an old lady. Maybe he's got kids. Maybe he's got a boyfriend. I mean, all these questions are like, they're loose, right? And they're afoot. But he's the most compelling character.
Yeah.
Because he's driven by something greater than himself. He wants to make people who will protect the country he has decided he will defend.
It's real easy for him to light up the screen because the rest of the movie is so sort of dour and boring that, like, when he comes on, it's like, ooh.
The better story, and the one that is more, it seeks to be emotionally compelling, is the Foley-Mayo story, which comes to a head when Foley discovers that Mayo he's an entrepreneur who's selling crap to help all the other officer candidates get their gear in order to withstand inspection. And that's uncovered, and then he doesn't get his leave. Foley's going to punish him all weekend until he quits.
Yeah.
Deal off. I ain't gonna quit. All right, then you can forget it. You're out. Don't you do it. Don't you. I got nowhere else to go.
And for some reason, that melts the heart of Foley, who's been working him. I don't buy that. But then I'm, 50-year-old Garrett's like looking at this thinking, you graduated college. Plenty of people who graduate college don't know what they're supposed to be going to do with their life. Your buddy Sid's willing to go back to JCPenney and just run the floor.
Right.
You got options.
Yeah.
You don't want to go back and live over the whorehouse with your old man in the PI, but you don't have to because you're stateside.
Right. I'm certain there's a Deborah Winger for you in every town you visit when you look like that.
It's not as desperate as that line of dialogue in that scene seems to make it. And I was unprepared for how shallow that felt.
Yeah.
Because I remember that being important. I've made the joke with friends who are also familiar with the movie. You're down in your cups.
Yeah.
I got nowhere else to go. It's very funny in the right mood with the right people. Because we're Clint Eastwood lovers in this room.
Yeah.
Right? We've done that routine.
Yes.
I had noticed a connection to Heartbreak Ridge because that whole movie is just about Gunnery Sergeant Clint Eastwood.
Right.
And it humanizes him quite deeply. And his willingness to break people down because he's building a team that can do something extraordinary, which we watch happen. we get him then as the fulfillment of what Foley isn't, a complete in-the-round guy with a private life. And so that's kind of what I think the value of this movie may be, if we want to take seriously that it has a role to play in film history. In the end, I don't think this is a good movie really at all. But this is very much of its moment. The sort of oddly characterized people who are cutouts for types, and yet all of the supporting players run away with every scene they're involved with. They're given even a little bit of business or a line of dialogue because they're overmatching the named talent. But if they'll take their clothes off, it goes right back to them. Because look, her nipples are on screen.
Yeah.
And I can see his pubic hair.
The lifters up where we belong.
This is Blockbusters and Birdwalks, a conversation between Garrett Chaffin-Quiray and
Ed Rosa.
Boop boobity doo.